I want you to imagine a single specific point in the night sky. Like, if you were to map it out using standard astronomical coordinates, it sits at exactly 26 to 27 degrees of the constellation Sagittarius.
Right, right, in that very specific pocket.
Exactly. And to the naked eye, this area looks completely empty. It's totally obscured. It's hidden behind the incredibly dense layers of interstellar dust.
Yeah, you just cannot see what is actually there.
You can't. Yet for 30,000 years, you have these totally isolated human cultures separated by vast oceans and, well, millennia of time.
Cultures that literally never spoke to one another.
Never. But they have all pointed at this exact patch of darkness and called it this engine of immense power, like of cosmic intelligence and of profound destruction and rebirth.
What's fascinating here is that the convergence is just staggering when you lay the timelines side by side. When we were talking about the classical Maya in Mesoamerica, Aboriginal Australians, Babylonian astronomers.
It's a massive list.
It really is. The Vedic sages in the Indian subcontinent, the Hellenistic Greeks, every single one of these traditions, they homed in on this precise coordinate, completely independent of one another.
And what makes this so much more than just, an anthropological curiosity is the science sitting on our desks today.
Right, the modern data.
Yeah. We are taking that ancient archaeoastronomy along with all these esoteric mystical frameworks and placing them right next to the absolute latest astrophysical data. I mean, we have the optical proof from the Event Horizon Telescope in 2022.
Which was a massive deal.
Huge. And on top of that, the brand new, totally paradigm-shifting discoveries from the XRISM space telescope that were just published in January of 2026.
The recent data changes everything.
It really does. So the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the profound strangeness of how so many isolated human traditions accurately intuited the location and, the precise physical mechanics of our galaxy's supermassive black hole.
Sagittarius A star.
Right, Sagittarius A star. And they did this long before a single telescope was ever invented. We're exploring what it changes for you, listening right now, to know what is actually sitting at the center of our galactic home.
That's a huge question.
It is. But okay, let's unpack this because honestly, my first reaction to this entire premise is just heavy skepticism.
Oh, sure. Naturally.
I mean, how is it mathematically or historically possible that a Mayan priest and a modern astrophysicist are looking at the same blank wall of dust and coming to the identical conclusion about what it does?
It sounds impossible.
Right. Isn't there a huge risk that we are just retrofitting ancient myths to match modern physics through, basic human pattern recognition?
Well, that skepticism is the perfect place to start. Because the temptation is always to just reduce the ancient perspective to mere superstition or maybe poetic coincidence.
Yeah, just brush it off.
Exactly. Or, conversely, the other temptation is to view the modern data as just sterile physics, completely devoid of any philosophical weight. And we really have to resist both of those urges.
So how do we bridge that gap?
To truly understand how these totally different epistemological systems arrived at the exact same destination, we have to recognize that our ancestors possessed a highly developed methodology of observation.
One that we've kind of lost, right?
Largely lost, yes. They weren't looking at the sky the way we do, hunting for bright objects against a dark background. They were actually doing the inverse.
Reading the negative space.
Exactly.
Because before we get into the massive radio interferometry arrays and X-ray observatories, we really have to strip away the light pollution. If you live in a city today, your visual relationship with the cosmos is defined by just a handful of bright pinpricks.
The context is entirely gone for most of us.
It is, which forces us to look at dark sky cosmology.
Yeah.
Because if you travel into the Australian outback, far from any artificial light, the Milky Way ceases to be this faint smudge.
Oh, it completely dominates the sky. It is this luminous, massive structural arch.
And embedded within that dense band of starlight are these massive, sweeping rivers of absolute blackness.
The molecular clouds.
Right. Interstellar dust so thick that it completely absorbs and blocks the visible light of the millions of stars burning right behind it.
And for Aboriginal Australians, who are operating within this continuous cultural timeline stretching back tens of thousands of years, those dust clouds were not just empty space.
No, the absence of light was the constellation itself.
Exactly. The quintessential example of this is the Emu in the sky.
I love this one.
It's beautiful. If you locate the Southern Cross, positioned directly beneath it is this really prominent dark nebula called the coal sack.
Okay.
So in Aboriginal astronomical traditions, that dark void forms the head and the beak of this massive celestial emu.
Wow.
And then the long neck and the heavy body of this bird stretched downward, tracing the dark dust lane straight through the constellation of Scorpius.
And where does the body sit?
Its immense belly rests squarely in Sagittarius. So the physical body of this mythological creature is formed by the specific galactic dust lanes that are obscuring the supermassive black hole at the core of our galaxy.
They literally build a cosmological map using the shadows.
They did.
And this wasn't purely symbolic either. The positioning of that dark mass in the sky dictated the rhythms of their physical survival.
Oh, entirely. The celestial mechanics of the emu governed their earthly reality. Because of the Earth's orbit, the orientation of the emu occurs to shift throughout the year.
Right, it moves across the sky.
Yeah. During the months when the emu stretches across the sky, appearing to, run, it signaled specific ceremonial times.
Okay.
But then later in the year, as the celestial emu shifts and actually appears to be sitting flat on a nest.
Oh, wait, a nest?
Yes, a nest. That visual alignment perfectly coincided with the exact weeks when earthly emus were laying their eggs.
Which was a massive food source.
A vital, totally time-sensitive food source.
Mm-hmm.
So their entire societal rhythm, hunting cycles, gathering, ceremonial life, it was all inextricably anchored to this massive dark structure.
It is just a profound demonstration of a knowledge system constructed entirely upon reading the void.
It really is. Taking the negative space of the universe and recognizing that the void is the active agent.
Yeah. And crossing the Pacific over to Mesoamerica, the classic Maya applied a very similar observational focus to that exact same strip of darkness near Sagittarius.
They did, though they didn't conceptualize it as an animal.
No, they saw it as a road, the Xibalba bee.
The Black Road. Mayan cosmology viewed the Milky Way itself as a living, dynamic entity. It was often depicted as a great cosmic tree or even a canoe.
Right.
But that specific dark rift, that dense molecular cloud hiding the galactic center, was understood unequivocally as a portal.
The entrance to Xibalba.
Exactly, the underworld. This was the threshold souls crossed upon death. But more importantly, it was the cosmic mouth from which all biological and spiritual life re-emerged into the manifest world.
So it was the ultimate locus of transformation.
It was.
A portal of death and rebirth, situated precisely where an object of infinite density crushes matter out of existence. I mean, that's wild. But the Maya weren't just telling allegories around fire. They institutionalized this understanding into their architecture and their timekeeping.
Yes, the precision of Mayan archaeoastronomy is where the myth really crosses over into hard data, because they were obsessive master timekeepers.
They tracked celestial mechanics over incredibly long durations.
Very long, and they recognized that the sun's path aligns with this dark rift on the December solstice.
Which brings a precession, right?
Exactly. Because of precession, which is that gradual shift in the orientation of Earth's axis of rotation, taking roughly 26,000 years to complete a cycle, the background of stars behind the sun slowly drifts over millennia.
Okay.
The Maya calculated that the winter solstice sun would drift into perfect alignment with that cosmic mouth, the dark rift of Sagittarius.
Which obviously gives context to the massive cultural phenomenon we all live through regarding the year 2012.
Oh, definitely.
Because independent researcher John Major Jenkins famously proposed that this rare precessional alignment was the specific trigger for the end date of the Mayan long count calendar.
Right. And while Jenkins' 2012 thesis sparked, intense pushback within academic Mayanist circles.
Yeah, most archaeologists argue the Maya simply viewed it as the rolling over of a massive calendar epoch, not some apocalyptic conclusion.
Exactly. But the underlying physical astronomy is not up for debate. The winter solstice sun did indeed transit the center of that dark rift in the window between roughly 1980 and 2016.
Right.
And the Maya deliberately engineered their ceremonial architecture, their pyramids, their sightlines, to track the sun's interaction with this highly specific patch of the Milky Way.
They assigned supreme architectural importance to a space they couldn't even see through.
Yes.
It's the equivalent of learning that your ancestors spent thousands of years venerating a completely blank wall in their home.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
They built altars facing it. They sync their agricultural cycles to the light hitting it. They wrote immense treatises on how this blank drywall was the source of all existence.
Yeah.
And then millennia later, we invent structural imaging scanners. We point the scanner at that exact wall and discover a massive, humming, high-voltage nuclear reactor hidden just behind the plaster.
That is exactly what happened.
They had no optical tools to see the reactor, yet they behaved exactly as if they knew the immense gravity of what was sitting there.
The gravity is the key word there. They really perceived the density of that space. But, you know, observing meaning in a dark rift is one methodology. Establishing precise astronomical coordinates over long stretches of time requires an entirely different tool set.
Right, because the Maya mapped the cultural meaning, but to understand how ancient humans locked onto specific celestial mechanics without telescopes, we have to look at how they tracked planetary velocity through that dark space.
And that requires mathematics.
Which forces us to look at the Babylonians. This is roughly around 1000 BCE. When archaeologists recovered and translated the Mula pen tablets, it completely shattered our assumptions about ancient computational abilities.
It really did. The Babylonians were the true architects of mathematical astronomy. They transitioned from pure observation to complex prediction.
Right.
And their focus zeroed in on the exact region we now identify as Sagittarius, which they catalog as Pabelsag, the divine archer.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there and play the skeptic again.
Go for it.
It's one thing to say the Babylonians saw a dark patch and told a story about an archer. It's entirely another to say they used advanced math to map it. Because if I go outside tonight and look at a blank, dark patch of sky, I have no grid, I have no reference points. How are they calculating anything, let alone planetary velocity, across a void?
Well, they abstracted the sky into a mathematical coordinate system. The Babylonians established the earliest form of the zodiac, not as like a magazine horoscope, but as a fixed reference track along the ecliptic.
The path the sun and planets appear to travel.
Exactly. By measuring the angular distance of a planet relative to fixed reference stars from the vantage point of their ziggurats, they could quantify movement.
Okay, so they were tracking specific planets.
They were particularly obsessed with Jupiter, actually, which was the celestial manifestation of their supreme deity, Marduk.
Right.
The clay tablets held in the British Museum reveal something completely astonishing. The Babylonians were deploying a form of proto-calculus to track Jupiter's speed as it passed through the Pabelsag region.
Tracking speed over time without modern equations. I mean, how did they actually write that out on clay?
It's incredible. They used geometry to calculate abstract velocity. They drew specific trapezoids on damp clay.
Trapezoids.
Yeah. In these diagrams, one axis represented time, and the other axis represented the velocity of Jupiter. So by calculating the area of the trapezoid, they were calculating the total distance Jupiter traveled across the sky during a specific time frame.
Wow.
This is the fundamental principle of integral calculus, finding the area under a curve.
That's brilliant.
And they did not deploy this complex, really labor-intensive mathematics for random stretches of sky.
Oh, let me guess.
Yeah, they utilized their most sophisticated computational tools specifically for this region, hiding the galactic core, because they recognized it as mathematically and astrologically charged territory.
They felt the structural weight of the area.
They absolutely did.
And the Hellenistic Greeks formalized that intuition of structural weight into the concept of the Axis Mundi.
The cosmic pillar, right. Hellenistic cosmologists hypothesized a central axis around which the entire architecture of the heavens rotated.
Obviously, they didn't possess the astrophysical model of a spiral galaxy.
No. Yet their cosmological geometry placed this axis mundi at the precise intersection where the ecliptic crosses the galactic equator.
Which just happens to be the exact location of Sagittarius A star.
Exactly.
I mean, even without knowing they lived on the outer arm of a spinning galactic disk, their intuition of celestial mechanics led them to place the foundational pillar of reality at the actual center of mass.
Structurally, their intuition was entirely correct. The supermassive black hole is the closest physical manifestation of a cosmic axis that exists in our sky.
It's wild.
But of all the ancient traditions, the one that provides the most profound, almost chilling philosophical exactness is the Vedic astronomy of ancient India.
Yes. This is the piece that completely reframes the conversation.
It's a major aha moment.
It really is. So, in Vedic sidereal astrology, the sky is divided into 27 lunar mansions known as nakshatras.
Right.
Now, we need to clarify the difference between tropical and sidereal systems for a second because it matters for the coordinates. Modern Western astrology uses the tropical zodiac, which is locked to the seasons. Like the spring equinox is always 0 degrees Aries.
Yeah.
But the Vedic sidereal system is anchored to the actual fixed stars. So because of that precessional wobble we discussed earlier, the two systems have drifted apart over thousands of years.
And the precision of the sidereal system is vital here. In the Vedic sky, The precise location of the galactic center falls into the first 13 degrees of the sidereal constellation of Sagittarius.
Okay.
That specific spatial domain is governed by the Mula nakshatra,
And the Sanskrit translation of Mula is literally the root.
the root of the sky.
It gives me chills. And it gets so much deeper when you look at the governing deity of that specific space.
Yeah.
Mula is ruled by Nirriti. She is the goddess of dissolution, destruction, and calamity.
Right, but we have to be careful with how we frame that destruction.
Exactly. Because this isn't a chaotic, evil destruction. Her specific function in the cosmology is to tear out false foundations. She destroys anything that is untrue, unstable, or illusory, forcing matter and consciousness back down to their absolute base components so that genuine reality can exist.
This raises an important question, and I really want the listener to sit with the physics of that for a moment.
Yeah.
Think about the mechanical reality of a supermassive black hole. It is an engine of supreme dissolution. Its gravitational pull is so unfathomably intense that it strips stars, planets, and gas of their chemical properties.
It pulls matter down past the atomic level.
Yes, crushing it into a singularity, which is a state where our current understanding of physics completely breaks down into pure quantum information. It literally destroys the physical foundation of reality as we understand it.
It is the ultimate boundary where physical laws are dismantled.
Exactly. And we have to ask ourselves, how does a culture operating thousands of years before the invention of the telescope look at the exact coordinate of a 4 million solar mass black hole, name it the root, and declare that its specific function is the foundational destruction of physical matter?
It's insane.
It stretches the boundaries of coincidence to the breaking point. It suggests a capacity for human perception, perhaps a resonant attunement to gravitational frequencies during states of deep contemplative observation that we have entirely discarded in the modern age.
The mystics and the mathematicians have been pointing at this coordinate for millennia, but, we live in an era that demands empirical proof.
We need the data.
We do. And in the last few years, the optical tools finally caught up to the intuition. Science arrived at the portal.
May 2022, the Event Horizon Telescope collaboration releases the first visual evidence of Sagittarius A star.
And for anyone who missed the press conferences or, just saw the headline and scrolled past, we really need to break down the mechanics of this image because capturing a photograph of a black hole is inherently a paradox.
It is.
You cannot photograph an object whose gravity is so intense that light itself cannot escape.
Right, you capture the silhouette,
Mm-hmm.
you photograph the event horizon, which is that absolute threshold of no return.
So how did they do it?
To do this, astronomers didn't use a single massive optical lens. They used something called very long baseline interferometry.
VLBI.
Yes, they synchronized a global network of radio observatories, effectively turning the entire planet Earth into a single massive radio telescope dish.
Just incredible.
They peered straight through the 26,000 light years of obscuring dust we've been talking about, capturing the radio emissions from the galactic core.
And the resulting image is just stunning. Instead of using the cliche of a flaming donut that was kind of all over the news, let's use a more accurate mechanical analogy.
Okay.
Think of water violently circling a cosmic drain. The water represents superheated plasma and gas. Because of the sheer mass of the black hole, which is, again, 4 million times the mass of our sun compressed into a space smaller than the orbit of Mercury, that plasma is being whipped around the event horizon at a significant fraction of the speed of light.
Right.
The water molecules, so to speak, are smashing into each other with such violence that the friction generates blinding amounts of radiation. We aren't actually seeing the drain. We are seeing the violent friction of the matter right before it crosses the threshold.
And importantly, the light emitted by that glowing accretion disk is literally being bent around the black hole by the object's immense gravity, which is what creates that luminous ring.
It's bending light.
Bending light itself. The release of that image was a watershed moment for humanity. We finally laid eyes on the root of the galaxy.
We really did.
But, the narrative that emerged immediately after that 2022 press release characterized Sagittarius A star as relatively dormant.
Yeah, that was the big takeaway for a while.
Compared to other active quasar-like galaxies that are constantly devouring material, ours was viewed as a quiet, sleeping giant.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, because that brings us to the discovery that completely upends the narrative.
Yes.
We are moving from the radio waves of 2022 to the high-energy X-ray astrophysics of January 2026. Researchers from Michigan State University, analyzing data from the XRISM Space Telescope, published findings in the Astrophysical Journal letters that prove the sleeping giant recently woke up.
This is huge.
Yeah.
We need to distinguish between radio waves and X-rays here because it explains the breakthrough.
Okay, let's break that down.
Radio waves, which the Event Horizon Telescope used, they show us the steady structural layout of the accretion disk. High-energy X-rays, which the XRISM Telescope captures, are generated by catastrophic, violent events.
Like explosions.
Massive explosions. Magnetic fields snapping and reconnecting, material being violently shredded. Lead researcher Stephen Derby and his team weren't pointing XRISM directly at the black hole. They were actually analyzing vast molecular clouds situated a few hundred light years away from the core.
And what did they find?
They found those clouds were glowing intensely with high-energy X-rays.
But molecular gas clouds do not spontaneously generate X-ray radiation.
Exactly the problem.
Yeah.
They were reflecting the X-rays. Kirby's team had discovered a massive light echo.
A light echo. Okay, think about seeing a lightning storm far out on the dark horizon. You might not actually see the initial bolt of lightning strike the ground because maybe a hill is in the way. But a split second later, you see the massive clouds overhead light up from the flash. You are seeing the echo of the light bouncing off the environment. The XRISM telescope captured that exact phenomenon just on a cosmic scale.
Yes. Sometime in the very recent past, and astronomically speaking, we mean within the last few hundred to 1,000 years, Sagittarius A star experienced a catastrophic feeding event.
It ate something.
It consumed something massive. Perhaps a dense cloud of molecular gas drifted too close, or a star crossed the tidal disruption radius and was shredded. When the black hole consumed this matter, it released a blinding, ferocious flare of high-energy X-ray radiation.
That flash blasted outward at the speed of light. Now, we didn't see the initial flash here on Earth, likely because, well, we didn't have X-ray telescopes 1,000 years ago.
Exactly.
But that radiation kept traveling through space until it slammed into those distant gas clouds hundreds of light years away. The clouds acted like a mirror, reflecting the X-rays back toward us.
And because the reflected light had to take a longer angled path to reach Earth, it took centuries longer to get here.
So we are literally watching the ghost of an ancient explosion arrive right now.
We are. And the implications are profound. The galactic heart is not dormant. It is actively roaring.
Roaring.
Kirby explicitly noted that his decades of astrophysical training did not prepare him for the sheer scale and violence evident in the telemetry. We assumed we lived in a quiet, stable galactic neighborhood.
But we don't.
We do not. The core is active.
Now, tie the physics back to the timeline, a few hundred to 1,000 years ago. That eruption from the supermassive black hole happened during recorded human history.
Yes.
Think about the cultural frameworks we just discussed. The Vedic texts associating Nirriti with the foundational destruction at the root of the sky. The Maya venerating the dark rift as a terrifying portal of dissolution.
That lines up perfectly.
This wasn't just abstract poetic metaphor. It is violent, active astrophysics occurring at the exact time these cultures were formulating their cosmologies. They were building altars to a space that was, in that very era, erupting with unimaginable cosmic power.
It creates a perfect bridge. We have incontrovertible optical proof of an active, erupting 4 million solar mass gravity, well, sitting exactly where the ancient world placed the cosmic gateway.
Yeah.
And because we now know the engine is active, we have to examine how contemporary esoteric frameworks and contemplatives process this astrophysical reality. Because the drive to interpret the galactic center didn't die with the ancient world.
No, it has deeply permeated modern metaphysical systems.
Modern Western astrology, for example, has fully integrated the galactic center into its practice. As we established, it sits at roughly 26 to 27 degrees of tropical Sagittarius.
Right.
The way astrologers interpret planetary interaction with this space is fascinating because it mirrors the mechanics of a black hole so elegantly.
When a major, slow-moving planet transits across that 27-degree mark, modern astrologers interpret it as an alignment with the galactic core. They describe these transits as downloads or massive transmissions of cosmic information.
But the key distinction they make is that this information bypasses the conscious, rational intellect.
Okay, so it's not a logical thought.
No, it doesn't arrive as a logical thought. It operates on the nervous system, deep within the substrate of the unconscious mind.
And we have seen intense planetary traffic through that exact coordinate recently. Saturn, the planet of structure and restriction, crossed the galactic center in 2017.
Right.
Pluto, the planet of profound transformation and destruction, squared the exact degree through the early 2020s and is moving into further alignments. But looking at the landscape of 2026, esoteric practitioners aren't pointing to one single isolated planetary trigger.
No, they are talking about the cumulative residue. The heavy-hitting archetypes have been churning the energetic waters at the root of the sky for a decade.
Whether a listener engages with astrology literally or views it purely as a symbolic language for human psychology, the stability of the core metaphor across entirely unrelated traditions is what we really must pay attention to.
Yes, if you read modern galactic astrology, 19th century theosophy, or even the contemporary starseed frameworks proliferating online, the Galactic Center is universally described as a gateway.
A gateway. It is never a final destination. You do not travel to the Galactic Center to build a house and stay. It is a conduit. It is a place that matter, energy, and souls pass through.
Which is the exact definition of a singularity. An event horizon is the ultimate threshold. It is the boundary where the known laws of space and time surrender to an entirely different set of physical rules.
This concept of the threshold maps perfectly onto the tarot as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Esoteric scholars who correlate astronomical coordinates with archetypal imagery consistently link the Galactic Center to a very specific, potent triad of major arcana cards: the Tower, the Star, and the World. Let's unpack the mechanics of those cards, because the astrophysics of a black hole are written right into the imagery.
The Tower is the archetype of sudden, catastrophic revelation. The imagery typically shows a lightning bolt striking a tall, artificially constructed building, blowing the crown off and sending the inhabitants plummeting.
Right.
It represents the violent demolition of false structures, illusions, and ego.
Which is the Vedic Nirriti tearing out the false foundation. And astrophysically, it is the exact process of spaghettification. The tidal forces of a black hole physically stretching and shredding a star that wanders too close, destroying its structural integrity completely.
Once the structural collapse is complete, you move to the star. The star is the archetype of cosmic orientation. It is a pure, unadulterated truth that remains after the illusion of the tower has been burned away.
The core.
It is the navigation point in the darkness, the radiation of pure information.
And finally, the world. This card represents the completion of a massive cycle. But it is vital to understand that in tarot, completion is never a dead end.
Never.
The world card inherently implies that the end of one paradigm is the gestational environment for the next. Demolition, pure orientation, cyclical rebirth. That triad is the exact narrative the Maya encoded into the Black Road.
It is, and we find the exact same architectural structure in Kabbalah, specifically concerning the concept of Da'at.
Right, Da'at. So in the Kabbalistic tree of life, you have the 10 Sephiro, which are the fundamental emanations or attributes of the divine, things like wisdom, understanding, severity, and beauty. But then you have Da'at.
Da'at is the hidden Sephira. It does not exist as a structured emanation like the others. It sits centrally on the middle pillar, positioned across the abyss that separates the upper triad of divine intellect from the lower Sephirot of emotional and physical manifestation.
It is the gateway between the unmanifest void and the manifest reality.
Precisely. Da'at translates to knowledge, but it is a highly specific form of knowledge. It is not knowledge constructed through rigorous logic or accumulation of facts.
So what kind of knowledge is it?
It is unconstructed, spontaneous revelation. Modern Kabbalistic scholars have noted the breathtaking structural symmetry between Da'at and a supermassive black hole. Da'at is mathematically a singularity on the tree of life. It is hidden, it is technically empty of its own structure, and yet it is the critical threshold through which all genuine transformative transmission must pass. It is the physics of an event horizon translated flawlessly into spiritual architecture.
It's just wild how it all lines up. And if we want to pull from an entirely different mythology just to prove how pervasive this intuition is, look at the Norse cosmology.
Yes, Yggdrasil.
They envisioned the universe held together by Yggdrasil, the immense world tree. And where are the roots of this cosmic structure anchored? They reach deep down into the well of Mimir.
The well of hidden wisdom.
Right. Odin sacrificed his own eye. He surrendered his normal biological perception of reality just to take a single drink from that well. Think about the mechanical geometry of that myth.
That's literal.
A massive rotating cosmic structure, the tree, is entirely anchored by and orbiting around a dark, gravitationally intense well of profound, hidden information. That is a one-to-one literal description of a spiral galaxy rotating around a supermassive black hole.
The Norse did not possess radio interferometry. They possessed poetry. but their poetry accurately described the physics of the Milky Way.
It did.
If we synthesize this, if we accept that across the span of human history, multiple traditions pointed to a gateway of dissolution and wisdom, and if we acknowledge the 2026 XRISM data proving that this gateway is actively roaring, we have to bridge the cosmological down to the deeply personal.
We really do.
What does it actually mean for a human being to live their daily life in a galaxy with an active core?
This is where we have to address the psychological reality of the present moment, because if you speak to contemplatives, modern seekers, or frankly just observe the general public trying to navigate the current era, there is a widespread, almost unavoidable intuition that the background hum of human experience has fundamentally shifted.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, there's an undeniable feeling of acceleration, a profound spiritual restlessness. People feel as though the old systems, ecological, political, social, are fracturing.
Yeah, falling apart.
Now, to maintain intellectual rigor, we must acknowledge the different lenses through which this can be interpreted. If you are esoterically inclined, you might view this shift as a literal energetic transmission radiating outward from the active black hole, bypassing the conscious mind and rewiring the nervous system.
Right.
Or you might view it astrologically as the necessary structural breakdown initiated by Pluto's transit near the core.
But you don't even need metaphysics to feel it. You can view it through a purely sociological lens. We are a species undergoing unprecedented technological and ecological disruption.
Absolutely.
We are staring down the barrel of artificial intelligence and massive climate shifts. It is entirely possible that we are simply projecting our very real internal anxieties onto the cosmos. We are reading our own instability into the stars.
But regardless of the mechanism, whether the black hole is transmitting a frequency or human psychology is projecting a metaphor, the feeling of the shift is demonstrably real in the population. The archetype of the tower is active. People feel the false foundations of their lives being shaken and stripped away.
And this is where I want to put up a massive guardrail, because it is incredibly easy for this kind of conversation to spiral into catastrophizing. I want to explicitly steer away from fear here.
Very important.
This is not a discussion about doomsday cosmic forces coming to exact vengeance on humanity. When we use words like dissolution, or talk about the goddess Nirriti, or describe a black hole shredding a star, the modern ego panics.
It does. Our modern psychology demands safety, predictability, and linear growth. But our ancestors did not panic when they looked at the dark rift.
No, they weren't terrified at all. They were deeply ceremonially respectful. They recognized the immense gravity of the space, but they did not view the void as a hostile threat.
They understood it as the fundamental engine of reality. They accepted that the total destruction of the obsolete is the strict, non-negotiable prerequisite for the birth of anything new.
Yeah, it is not an apocalypse. It is a profound reorientation to the truth. So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? How do you actually interact with a 4 million solar mass singularity that is 26,000 light years away, yet intricately mapped onto your own intuition?
Well, the modern esoteric and contemplative traditions offer three very specific grounding practices for engaging with this reality. The first practice is the simplest, but arguably the most impactful. Look up.
Literally step outside and locate it.
Yes. Depending on your hemisphere, the constellation Sagittarius is prominent in the southern sky, generally visible from late May through October. You will not be able to see the black hole, of course, because the interstellar dust obscures it.
Right, the blank wall.
But find the constellation.
Yeah.
Point your chest toward that exact coordinate. Knowing where the literal center of gravity of your galactic home is fundamentally alters your relationship to the night sky.
I love that.
You are no longer staring at a random assortment of bright dots. You are physically orienting yourself toward the engine that holds our entire solar system in its gravitational embrace. It provides a profound sense of scale and address.
It completely recenters your perspective, which leads directly into the second practice. Sit with the dark rift. We have spent an hour discussing how the core is hidden behind impenetrable dust clouds. The mystical traditions understood that this visual obstruction was not merely a physical inconvenience.
No, it was the core spiritual lesson. The lesson is that the most vital, powerful forces in reality cannot be observed directly. They can only be understood by the effects they produce, by the gravity they exert on the visible world around them.
Wow.
The outer practice of looking at the obscure dark rift in the sky perfectly mirrors the inner practice of meditation and contemplation. You must turn your attention toward the void within.
Sit with the emptiness.
Sit with the emptiness, not as a bare wasteland, but with the profound acknowledgement that the void is the generative space from which all structures arise and eventually return.
And the third practice, which runs entirely counter to our modern productivity-obsessed conditioning, receive without grasping.
This is the operational key. Whether you interpret the galactic core as a purely physical, astrophysical phenomenon or as a mystical transmitter of cosmic intelligence, the practical advice across every single tradition is identical. You cannot aggressively pull from it.
Right.
You cannot force a revelation, an aha moment, or a sudden upgrade from the root.
Because if you try to forcefully extract something from the gravity of a black hole, you are going to be shredded.
Exactly the mechanics of it. The practice is not about effort. It is about tuning your receiver. You have to quiet your own nervous system down. You have to cease the frantic grasping for answers. The X-ray light echoes detected by the XRISM telescope prove that the energetic transmission is already washing over our solar system.
The broadcast is live.
The broadcast is live. You do not need to hunt for the signal. You simply need to become still enough and quiet enough to actually perceive it.
It is about becoming permeable to reality as it actually is, rather than how we wish it to be. And that leaves me with one final awestruck reflection to close out this deep dive. We started by questioning the linear map of human progress. We looked at how isolated cultures over 30,000 years, utilizing entirely different methodologies, arrived at the exact same conclusion as the most sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar orbital observatories of 2026.
A total, undeniable convergence of ancient mythology, mathematical abstraction, and contemporary astrophysics.
And of human intuition, operating entirely without a single glass lens, without supercomputers, without global radio arrays, if deep, quiet human observation could perfectly locate, mathematically track, and accurately describe the physics, the immense gravity, and the transformative destruction of a supermassive black hole 26,000 light-years away.
What else?
What else about the universe does the human body already know? What other vast cosmic realities are sitting inside us, perfectly mapped out in our substrate, just waiting for us to become quiet enough to hear them?